Hi, this is Jim Moynagh, and we are going to do some reading from an old Bassmaster magazine. And this little series I do is called Falling Asleep to Jim Moynagh, reading from vintage fishing magazines. And it just so all my vintage magazines are old Bassmaster magazines pretty much, so that's what you're getting. I should have maybe titled it that, but whatever, maybe someday I'll come into some other old fishing magazines. This one is November, December 1981. Okay, so I really haven't, and these are my dad's collection. Okay, these are what I mean, I look so forward to these showing up in the mail, because back in 1981, I was a sophomore in high school. And I remember I'd take these things and bring them to school, and I'd read them during classes at times. I still did well in grades. In fact, I remember the one in particular was French. I was a senior, so that was in 1983, 82 and 83. And so I would take these to French class, and French class was so easy. I mean, they didn't put much demands on us at all in that class. So I had a back row seat. So, and we watched a lot of movies that were spoken in French and stuff. So I'd always just, during those movies, I'd always just crack open one of these Bassmasters, and could have been, well, this was in 83, but that's the idea. So I did a lot of reading of Bassmaster and French class back at Irondale High School. So anyway, so let's see what we got for articles here. It's you never know what you're going to run into. Here's one called Getting to the Point. That's how do you pick a plastic worm hook. Advanced Depth Finder Techniques, page 66. Advanced Depth Finder Techniques from 1981. Boy, that's come a long, long way, because whatever's written in that article is by no means advanced depth finder techniques today. Special report bass boating 1982. Oh, okay. There's some boat stuff there, boat articles. Boy, oh boy. The line on your reel, success in your hands, regular features, the making of a bass angler, Herring Charlie adventures, fix-it tips, bass trading post, I don't know, boat towing economy, trailer towing safety, boring. The weekend angler, what is that? Some sage suggestions on fishing closer to home port, plus what the heck? A passel of tips from our readers on how to stretch your bass in funds and fun. Well, getting to the point, is there a perfect plastic worm fishing hook? That's kind of got my interest, because I'm interested to see what they would say, and whatever they say might very well hold up to right now, or it may not. I may have a thing or two to criticize, who knows. So anyhow, advanced depth finder techniques. Gosh, what this kind, I don't know. Herring Charlie in, horsing around. I don't know, maybe I should read a Herring. One of these times I'm going to read a Herring Charlie story. And that's the cartoon. There's, what was it, Don Worth and Cliff Shelby. Don Worth was the author. Cliff Shelby writes or draws some illustrative cartoons for the story. And anyways, they were like a monthly feature. So, okay, what the heck? Let's read a Herring Charlie story. Why not? Page 74. Let's see how many pages it is. If it goes on forever, I ain't gonna do it. Because one thing I've found is that these following asleep to Jim Moynagh reading from vintage fishing magazines, these videos can just go on and on sometimes. With some of these articles that even I start falling asleep while I'm reading them. All right, so here it is. There's one page. Oh God, yeah, this could be a long one. That is, yeah, that's still going on and on and on. That's like 6 pages. I mean, I'll be here for an hour reading all that. So, should I read that? I don't know. There's an illustration of them with a horse, a racehorse for some reason, in a bass costume. Huh. Well, look at that. The Jig and Frog by Mr. Twister. It's kind of interesting. Gosh. Preventative maintenance. Boring. I don't know. This ain't my favorite issue that I've done with this so far. You know, why don't we read the one about getting to the point? Let's see how long that one is. Getting to the point. That's the one about the fish hooks by Bill Phillips. Continued on page 14. Please don't go on any further. Oh, God. Oh, that's another long one. Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 4 pages. We can knock that one out. Okay. Snuggle up to your pillow. Turn the lights low. Here we go. Is there... Okay, this is in bold. First of all, the title is Getting to the Point. Okay. And on the bold up top here, it says, is there a perfect plastic worm fishing hook? The following special hook study tackles the question. Oh, it's an actual study. Now, I definitely have some guidelines that I go by when I pick out worm hooks. And in today's day and age, you know, there's so many variations of fishing a plastic worm. You know, you got wacky rigging, Nico rigging, Texas rigging, Carolina rigging. I mean, there's different hooks for, different techniques, and there's just, I do have some general guidelines. So I should probably write an article like this on all the different things, or do a video someday. All right, well, let's see what the author, Bill Phillips. Oh, it's by Bill Phillips of Angling Research Associates. Interesting. All right, here we go. The fishermen of the world have been going after fish since well before the beginning of recorded history and have contrived some ingenious methods to go about it. Sharpened sticks, spears, and crude nets might begin the list, and who knows how many more. Regardless, the most widely used device by far over the century has been the fish hook. With all that time and effort, you'd think the perfect fish hook would by now have been discovered and manufactured. Not so. It is probably a mistake to refer to the fish hook as if there were only one. Fish hooks abound in a bewilderment of sizes, shapes, colors, and uses. Even after centuries, man is still looking to design a better fish hook. And let me tell you, I was actively bass fishing in 1981. Obviously not at the level I am now, but just as a son of a, I was the son of a man who fished in the State Bass Federation at the time. So he was avid into it, and I tagged along, and yeah, I was kind of aware of, not a lot, but I was aware of some different hooks and things. And I'll tell you this, the hooks have come a long way since then. With the hook points are so much better now than what they were back then. They come pre-sharpened to So, I mean, back then there was not a hook you could buy back then where you didn't have the requirement of taking a file and honing that point to a better point. And also I remember hook points back then. So I remember on some jigs I had, I'd miss a couple fish and then I'd look and the hook point would be like curled. So there was just issues with hooks back then. I mean, they've come a long way. And there's so many different varieties now, which I kind of mentioned earlier, as far as depending on which technique you use. So yeah, they've come a long ways, but I'm kind of interested to see what they were saying back then in 1981. Okay, here we go. Next paragraph. The increasing popularity of plastic worm fishing during the last 2 decades placed a demand and has initiated a search for a better worm hook. Like the better mousetrap, however, it has been slow in evolving. Early monofilament harness rigs proved generally unacceptable to modern bass fishermen because the exposed hooks hung up on underwater debris. Weedless hooks, though generally more efficient than traditional harness rigs, resulted in too few fish landed of those hooked. Then, too, they were not all that weedless, and even the hook guard tended to gather algae and moss. All right, so in that paragraph, when they're talking about the early monofilament harness rigs, what they're talking about is, and you can still find them. You can still, I mean, I've seen them on tackle shelves as recently as in the last few times I've been in the tackle store. And these would be where basically you have a plastic worm that's usually in a coil, and you have 3 hooks that are embedded in the plastic with the hook's point sticking out, and it's all harnessed together on this monofilament harness. So apparently when they pour they must lay the harness in the mold and then pour the worm around this harness. And so that's what they're talking about there. They've been around a long time, and they're not bad at all, really. Those baits do catch fish. All right. Well, where was I? Okay. With the advent of the so-called Texas rig, fishermen previously disenchanted with the plastic worm began to discover its deadly potential, and the catches of already efficient worm fishermen reached legendary proportions. Still, there was something missing. Traditional hooks designed for bait fishing for the most part had barbs at ineffective hooking angles when embedded in a plastic worm, causing the worm to swim unnatural on retrieval or, on the hook set, ball up in the hook throat and prevent hooking the fish. The search for a perfect worm hook was on. One of the earliest worm hook designs, the Eagle Claw 295-JB Wormmaster, a sprout hook with an offset bend slightly below the hook eye, gained some measure of popularity. It kept the worm on the hook, and the barb was in an excellent position to penetrate the bass's jaw. Today, the 295-JB remains a popular worm hook with many professional bass anglers. I don't think I could pick that hook out of a lineup. I've probably had it in my hand at one time, but it's been so long, I seriously could not pick that hook out of a lineup. I don't think it's this. This looks like, the one in that picture there looks like one of them true turn hooks. Anyways, next paragraph. New hook innovations. Possibly the first really revolutionary innovation in plastic worm hooks was the Messler's rotating hook, introduced in 1975 by Joe Messler of Tulsa, Oklahoma. In parentheses, see This Hook Can't Miss by Chuck Roberts, Bassmaster magazine, July, August 1976. The Messler hook featured a large circular bend in its shank, but more or less maintained the popular sprout style hook. I am not familiar with Messler's rotating hook. The true turn, now I'm calling that a true turn. I don't know if that's the Messler, but a true turn looks just like that. And supposedly it has that kink in the shank of it has this kink here in the shank. Supposedly it's supposed to twist the point of the hook either up or down into the fish's mouth. But anyways, next paragraph. The bend reportedly caused the Messler hook to rotate when set so that the barb would penetrate the upper jaw of the bass. Joe Messler, it should be pointed out, designed the hook to catch big bass, which he was tired of losing on standard worm hooks. Well, that's good. Good, Joe. Joe's an innovator, looking for the better hook. That's one thing. I always got to be looking to do better, because just when you think there's no way to improve something, then along comes something better. It surprises me every time in fishing, that's for sure. But for everything that actually does improve things, there's usually about another 100 things that are made that are said to improve something, but really don't really do much. It's kind of the same level as what's already been out there. All right, anyways. And now I'm talking just in general fishing innovation, sort of terms there on that last sentence I said. All right, back to the article. At first, fishermen raved about the new Messler hook, and it soon was marketed by Wright and McGill, but that popularity declined. Wright and McGill explained, quote, fishermen either have extremely good or extremely poor success with the hook. There is no in between. Okay, why? Doesn't get into that. Next paragraph. In 1977, the father-son team of John and Wes Campbell of Montgomery, Alabama, used a standard Sproat variety, bending the shank at an angle perpendicular to the plane of the hook to create a new true turn hook. Okay, so that is the true turn hook right there. All right. The true turn, like the Messler hook, is designed as a twisting type hook that results in a cam action that forces the point to turn into the fish's upper lip. Cam action. Why is that cam action? Why is that cam action? What is cam action? I don't really know. Twisting, turning, cam action. All right, next paragraph. The more recent developments in worm hooks feature modifications which eliminate balling up of worms in the hook throats. So when they're talking about the hook throat, I guess they see what. So if you got the head of your plastic worm up here, and it's threaded and it's run, Texas string would run like this. So when it balls up, what they're saying is the head of the plastic up here slides down to here, and you end up with a big wad of plastic down here. Which is something I don't like to see either, because you can get all this plastic balling up down here and impeding the hook penetration. It might even cover the hook as well. So it was a problem then, and you'll still see it now on hooks we use today. All right, the more recent developments in worm hooks feature modifications which eliminate balling up of worms in the hook throats. Lou Childer and Sons Speed Sticker Hook was a small hook rather than a hook eye. This small hook holds the head of the worm while the hook point is embedded into the worm body. The line is attached to the bend in the hook shank. The line is attached to the bend in the hook shank. I'm not getting this. Interesting though. Worm so rigged won't slide down the hook shaft. Oh. Okay, now it's maybe what they're talking about. Okay, what they must be talking about is, we'll just go back to, I'm guessing what they're saying is, like, instead of the eye right up here, they put the eye here, somewhere in here. So you poke the head out of the worm here, and then your eye's tied here, so then there's much less chance for the head of this worm to slide past that eye in your line. That's kind of interesting concept. I've never seen a hook like that. Interesting concept. So, all right, yeah, just for the jargon, there's what we're looking at for the jargon. You know, they're showing the point, the throat, and so on, the eye, gap, point, just so you know what we're talking about here. All right, next paragraph. The Mr. Twister keeper hook features a barbed secondary shaft attached to the hook eye. The small shaft is inserted into the head of the worm. Then the hook barb is buried into the plastic worm body in the popular Texas rig style. This system also prevents the worm from balling up in the throat hook. Okay, so yeah, you'll see a lot of hooks today that have this keep. You'll have the hook, and then right at the eye of the hook, there'll be a lot of times you see like a little corkscrew wire. So you like corkscrew the head of the plastic worm, or a lot of times like some people will use that kind of a hook with like a Zoom horny toad or any other kind of toad plastic, and you screw that on there onto that corkscrew, and then so that corkscrew is called the keeper. In this case, with this Mr. Twister keeper hook, it was just instead of corkscrew, it was just a straight piece of wire with a couple barbs on it that would hold the head of the worm on there. Okay. The fact that some style worm hooks are favored by many anglers and cussed by others makes the question about the perfect worm hook a subject for endless debate among bass anglers. The following attempt to evaluate worm hooks was derived through exhaustive field and laboratory studies by the Angling Research Associates and field staff. The A. R. A. a research-oriented company headed by Bill Phillips, David Kastner, and Tim Sheriff, is headquartered in Opelika, Alabama, and serves as an independent testing and consulting organization to the fishing tackle industry. The ARA is dedicated to elimination of bias in its testing and reporting. The following findings are the results of weeks of extensive testing by the Angling Research Associates and their staff and field experts. All right, so yeah, I've never heard of these people, ARAs, but apparently, assuming they must have took a bunch of different worm hooks and tried them all. All right, conducting the tests. The Angling Research Associates, ARA, anglers fished a number of managed ponds containing large populations of bass ranging from 1 to 8 pounds. The anglers also fished several local lakes with the hope of catching larger fish. Data recorded during fishing periods included number of hook set attempts, number of fish hooked, number of fish landed. These are three things I'm always it's always in the back of my mind, because I'm always measuring how many bites am I getting and how many fish, how many of those bites are getting in the boat. That's whatever technique I'm throwing, that's always in the back of my mind, especially on new techniques, because I want to know, is this technique one that's a high percentage technique for, you know, for bite to landing kind of a ratio, or is it a low ratio of bite to getting it in the boat kind of a ratio? So that is really important. And I'm always tinkering with techniques, you know. If I feel like I'm always trying to think, how can I improve, like my Nico rig, for example? How can I improve my hooking ratio on a Nico rig? So I've bought many different styles of hooks and done a bunch of different, you know, just through hours of fishing a Nico rig. I've come to my own ideas as to what kind of hook I want and how I want to rig it. So, but that's very important. This is a very fundamental thing to keep in mind whenever you're fishing. The number of hook set attempts, number of fish hooked, number of fish landed. Always be aware of that. Only those strikes made when, in the angler's opinion, a bass actually had the worm in his mouth were considered legitimate hook set attempts. This generally meant that anglers had to feel resistance to their hook sets. So yeah, so they're not count. So if they feel a little poo, 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 and they set the hook and there's nothing there, they're not counting that as a hook set attempt, which is how I would go, because it could be just a little tiny bass, it could be a bluegill just nipping at the tail. So we don't want to have those in the count those in the data. Because the ARA investigators wanted to maximize the possibility of hooking fish, they instructed the anglers to fish as if their lives depended on the fish they would catch, and to use the same technique throughout the testing period. On all occasions, the anglers made the same number of hook set attempts, usually 5, before switching to another hook and made hook sets directly overhead. During the controlled fishing, the anglers used identical tackle, Shakespeare's BC 1100 ugly stick rods and President 11, or is it President 11 or President 2? Bait casting reels, 14-pound test, clear blue stren, monofilament line, Southern Plastics motor oil colored 6-inch hobo worms, and a 1/8 ounce bullet weight. So, okay, good. They're consistent. You know, the scientific method seems to be, they're aware of it. Twist type hooks. The first series of tests included the True Term Messler and the 295-JB hooks. Although hook size generally relates to the width of the hook gap, distance from the barb to the hook shank, there are no true tackle industry standards governing hook sizes, and sizes vary among manufacturers. Thus, the Messler hook was much larger than the True Turn or JB in a given size. A 2-aught hook and the True Turn and JB hooks matched the 6-inch worms chosen for the study, as did a size 1 Messler hook. And that's kind of true. So what they're saying there is one company's 1-aught hook is another company's size 1 hook. The ARA staff agreed that the gap distance was most important in hooking efficiency and should be used in selecting the hook sizes for the study. Because the size 1 Messler hook gap, 1.77 millimeters, 1.77 millimeters, that's tiny, was closest to those of the 2-aught 295-JB 1.520 and the True Term 1.4. It was selected for millimeters. That's got to be, because a millimeter is, the hook gap is not like that. It's got to be a typo, because 1.5 millimeters is like that. So they must be meant centimeters, which would be about something like, you know, 1.5 centimeters. All right. The anglers made a total of 293 hook set attempts with each hook during the 8-week study period. Results of the initial hooking testing appear in Figure 1, which is a chart here at the top in small print. Okay, so they all had, each hook had 293 strikes. So, I'm trying to decipher this, what they got in this chart here. So it looks like the True Turn hook came out on top. It had a percent of hooked, okay, strikes, hooked, landed, percent, 91, okay. Okay. This is kind of confusing what they got. I mean, we've only got a few numbers here, and I'm confused as how what they're talking about here. Percent landed, they got, all right, whatever. The True Turn came out on top with 91.3. Messler number 1 was 67.9, and the 295-JB 2-aught was 70. No, that would make the 295-JB second. So the Messler was last. Yeah, just looking at the raw, they have the raw numbers. So they had 293 strikes, and out of all those strikes, out of 293 strikes, the True Turn landed 230, the Messler landed 125, and the 295-JB landed 173. So the True Turn came out way ahead, actually. All right. The anglers made a total of 293 hook set attempts with each hook during the 8-week study period. Statistical analysis of this data suggests that the True Turn design was significantly superior to the other two hook styles in all categories. And it's what it is showing. A number of factors may well contribute to the observed differences in hooking and landing effectiveness, one of which may have to do with hook length and weight. The True Turn is shorter and lighter than the other hooks and is made from a smaller wire diameter. That is a factor, definitely. It is reasonable to assume that the bass might be able to detect the larger or heavier hooks sooner. Okay, now I disagree with that. It's just a thinner diameter hook is going to do a better job of penetrating a fish's mouth. Moreover, due to the very large bend, much of the Messler hook is exposed in Texas rig worms, lending it to even greater probability of detection by the fish. But that's not what we're measuring. We got 293 strikes on all these. So when they strike it, they grab it and inhale it. So they got, in every one of the, I mean, the way I look at it is they vacuum it up, so the whole thing is in their mouth. And so whether there's, I mean, the fish is committed to it and it's already in his mouth, whether it's a thick diameter shank hook or a thin diameter hook, wire hook. I don't get it. A little confused there what they're trying to get at. All right, next heading, next paragraph, it says light versus heavy hooks. Okay. The differences observed in the first study, figure 1, led to the initiation of a second study in which a new light wire JB type hook, the 295JL, was compared to the True Turn, which served as a control. The 295JL is identical to the 295JB, except that the wire diameter is 1 millimeter compared to the 1.325 in the JB size 2-aught hook. That's still kind of a thick hook. All right, so that's interesting. Let's see what I'm curious to see what they found out on this. All right. Results of the second study, conducted identically to the first, are tabulated in figure 2. Excuse me. All right, so what did they get here now? 100, so we got 100 strikes for the 295JL, 100 strikes for the True Turn, and 100 strikes for the 295JB, which was from the initial study. The JL, they almost stand for light. So, on the JL, we have landed 71 fish out of 100 strikes. With the True Turn, we've landed 81 fish out of 100 strikes. So that's 10 better. And then the JB was the worst at 59 landed, which is a horrible, horrible percentage. Horrible. I'm always looking for 90% or better on whatever I'm doing. If I can get to 90% or better, that's you're on a good. Your setup is good if you get 90% or better. Because sometimes that 90% can be 100%, and sometimes it can be 80. But yeah, 59 out of 100 is terrible. 71 out of 100 is not very good either. 81 out of 100 is, I mean, you're getting there. All right. All right. Okay, only 100 hook set hook set attempts were made with each hook during the study. However, because the percentages observed with the true turn hook approximate the earlier findings, the Angling Research Associates consider the results with the smaller sample to be continued on page 14. There's the Ranger 375 at the time. There she is. Go Ranger by Forrest L. Wood of Arkansas. Okay. Valid. Statistical analysis confirms this fact. Next paragraph. Light versus heavy hook results indicate that the lighter wire did result in more fish hooked and landed with the 295 JL hook. In fact, the percentages of hooked and landed fish, although lower than those observed using the true turn, are not significantly different. Percentage of hooked and landed fish, although lower than those, are not, leading the ARA staff to believe that wire diameter and hook lightness may well play important roles in hooking and landing fish. This, however, is not without its drawbacks. On several occasions, the 295 JL hook straightened out when larger fish were hooked. Straightened out. And I was going to get to this if they didn't. This, in the ARA staff's opinion, restricts usage of the light wire hook to instances in which only small fish, smaller than 3 pounds, are expected to be caught, a condition we don't believe exists, at least in most bassers' minds. Well, we all know we want to use lighter hooks. If we're going to use a lighter hook, which a lot of techniques require that, a lot of finesse techniques, we use lighter hooks, but then we match our rod's reel and line to accommodate the lighter hook. So we use softer rods, and so when we do pull on the fish and the fish pulls back, the rod bends instead of the wire hook bending. All right. Fishing for lunkers with a hook made of 2-light wire would be like hunting elephants with a .22 rifle. It could be done, but it is certainly not advisable. It would be interesting to compare the 295J hook in a wire diameter identical to that of the true turn hook, and the Angling Research Associates suggested to Wright McGill that they consider making a hook by that specification. Although we have no way of knowing to what degree the twisting action affects hooking bass, we are convinced that it does contribute to something, stated the ARA report. The consistent 86 to 89 fish hooked per 100 strikes with the true turn is obviously impressive. The fact that it seems to outperform other hooks, even lighter ones, lends credibility to the twist theory. Okay, before I go any further with this, I do not like true turn hooks at all. I just don't. So, and I used them early on in my amateur career. That's what I was using, and I got away from them, and I'm glad I did, because I just didn't like how the worm set up on the thing. I just got away from them. Maybe it was a mistake, I don't know. But they sure aren't around much anymore. They might still be around, but boy, it's hard to find them. All right. That both the true turn and Messler hook designs do twist during hook set appears to be the fact. Any Bassmaster can assure himself of this by holding a Texas rig plastic worm between the thumb and forefinger and pulling the line upward with the free hand. While the final position of the Messler hook cannot always be predicted, the true turn hook nearly always has the point uppermost. To get some idea of how many bass might be hooked in the upper lip when using the true turn hook, AR anglers set up another test. Of 100 fish landed on the size 2/0 hook, 94 were hooked in the upper portion of the mouth, 3 in the lower jaw, and 3 in the throat. Of the 94 hooked in the upper mouth, all but 7 were hooked in the delicate membrane just behind the front lip. The 7 hooked elsewhere had the hook penetrate the upper jawbone, which is all but impenetrable in really large bass. What about other hooks? After the ARA staff completed the first series of tests, the inevitable question, what about such and such hook, arose from numerous fishermen, each interested in knowing how well his own favorite hook might fare in a hook set study. Once again, the ARA anglers went back to the water. The final bank of tests, Figure 3, examined 4 additional worm hooks, all in size 2/0. Wright McGill Eagle Claw 295 XBL standard sprout, and the 449 WRPL weedless hooks, Mr. Twister's keeper hook, and the Lute Childer & Sons speed sticker hook. Once again, the True Turn hook was included as a control for comparative purposes. The True Turn hook equaled its hooking and landing efficiency as recorded in previous tests, thus making the other hook efficiencies valid for comparison with hooks included in previous tests. The 295 XBL standard sprout hook did well in the tests also, surpassing all hooks but the True Turn hook in both the present and previous tests. The standard sprout hook. Okay, the speed sticker hook was 3rd overall in bass hook to strike, but fell considerably in the landed hooked category, indicating that problems with the hook occurred after the bass had already been hooked. At least a portion of the landed hooked failures can be explained by the absence of a hook eye on the speed sticker. Oh yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Occasionally the line would slide down the hook shank during a landing attempt and the hook would pull out of the bass's mouth. Yeah, that was not good. The keeper hook fared better than the Messler hook in the hook strike category, but poorer than the True Turn, the 295 XBL, and speed sticker hooks. The keeper hook outperformed the speed sticker in the landed to hooked category, indicating that the problems associated with the former lie in the initial hooking of the fish. All right, so yeah, I try to stay away from those keeper system type hooks. They're easy. They're probably the easiest one to use. You can get your worm to just, if you really want a super straight worm rigged on there for a Texas rig, it really is the easiest to line up that worm straight with that system. But I'm just not as much of a fan of those keeper systems. I try to avoid them. About the only thing I use them for is on my frog, like my toad fishing. That's probably the only time I use one. All right, so let's go to the chart here. 200 strikes, 200. Yeah, so on the 295 XBL, we got 82.5% of those fish were landed. Speed sticker, you got 53%. Mr. Twister keeper, you had 63%. The weedless hook that they mentioned was 70.7, and the True Turn was 89.9. So True Turn, just kicking ass, kicking ass. I should duplicate this study. Got to go to a lake that's got a shitload of fish, though. Oops, pardon the language. But you're asleep by now, so you didn't hear that. Anatomy of a fish hook target. Results showing that so many successfully landed bass were hooked in the delicate membrane of the upper lip led ARA personnel to conclude that the best hooks are the ones most likely to have their points penetrate that membrane. With that premise in mind, the ARA investigators measured the widths of the membranes in bass ranging in size from 2 to 7 pounds. Bass's upper jaw consists of an outer bony lip followed by the membrane, and then another hard portion, the maxillary bone. If the, continued page 16, and this is the last page, okay guys and gals? Hook point embeds behind the membrane. It is difficult for the barb to penetrate deep enough to hold, especially in larger bass. Likewise, the hook point cannot easily penetrate the bony outer lip. Okay, the membrane width averages 0.90 to 1.05 centimeters on a 2-pound bass and 1.00 to 1.25 centimeters on a 7-pounder. Taking into consideration the width of the bony front lip, the prime target area for a hook point ranges from 0.73 to 1.75 centimeters in the 2-pound fish and 0.85 to 2.10 centimeters in the 7-pounder. See Figure 4. Hook gap and target membrane depth comparisons. Are you guys lost? Because I am. I'm not sure what they're doing here. Hook gap. This Figure 4 is a table here. Hook gap and target membrane depth comparisons. Okay, what the heck? The membrane width. The average is blah, 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 blah. Taking into consideration width of blah, 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 blah. The prime target area for a hook point ranges from yeah, don't know what. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not getting what they're talking about. They're talking about this chart. They got the gap. They got the gaps of all the hooks listed, and then they're showing the prime target gap for a 2-pound bass and the prime target gap for a 7-pound bass. So what they're trying to say is that you want the gap of your hook to fall within the range of this here for a 2-pound bass and a 7-pound bass. So a 2-pound bass target width is 0.73 to 1.78 centimeters, and the 7-pound bass is 0.85 to 2.10. So I think you'd want to. So if you just there's an overlap here, these two ranges, so you probably want to have a hook point that falls within that or a hook gap that falls within that overlap, I guess. I don't know. I need more drawings. So here's a picture of, here's a picture of the membranes they're talking about. Okay, comparing the hook gaps of the hooks tested to this target area suggests that all the true turn hook gaps, sizes 1/0 to 5/0, sizes 1/0 to 3/0 in the 295 JB, size 1/04 and 0 in the 295 XBL, and sizes 1/0 to 5/0 weedless hooks match the target area, but none of the Messler hooks have gaps small enough for the 2-pound bass. So the Messler hooks had a big gap. Interesting. The Messler hook sizes 1 to 2/0 match the target area of the 7-pound fish according to the ARA researchers. We believe this mismatch in gap size and target area may well be the reason that the Messler hook performed poorly on average sized bass in our study, said the ARA report. Occasionally the hook point will hit the target area, but not as often as the true turn, the 295 XBL or 295 JB hooks. On smaller fish, the Messler hook will even reach into the second membrane located behind the big maxillary bone, and each of the hooks on occasion even penetrated the thin maxillaries of young fish. Our anglers have had the greatest success with the 2/0 and 3/0 true turn hook, indicating that the front half of the target area might be most vulnerable to a solid hook set, since the gaps of those two hooks would fall in the front half of the membrane widths, continued the angling research findings. This makes sense. If the hook gap is deep enough for the point to get beyond the front lip, it can penetrate the membrane close to the lip and bind against it. If it penetrates too far behind the lip, the membrane may tear during the ensuing battle, allowing room for the hook to work free. Our suggestion then is that plastic worm hook gap should be between 1.24 and 1.48 centimeters for best results. In our experience, larger gaps tend to cause problems even in hooking larger fish, said the ARA staffers. This leads the ARA to believe that the large gaps in the size 2/0 keeper, the speed sticker, and the messler contribute to the low numbers of hooked fish with each of those hooks. Even the 295 JB 1.46 centimeters appears to border on having too large a gap size, as evidenced by its low hooked strike ratio. The differences between the True Turn 295 XBL and weasel's hooks might well be due to the twisting action of the True Turn plus the action of the weed guard on the weasel's hooks. All have small enough gaps. Obviously, every hook set attempt, even if made with a perfect gap size for the fish, isn't going to result in the hook point hitting the target membrane. This is the reason super sharp hook points and eye crossing hook sets are recommended by so many pro bassers. A finely honed hook and powerful set can send the point through even the toughest jaw. The human element. Okay, we're down to the last column here, guys. Oh, well, look at that. Once you know there's a two-turn hook, full-page advertisement right alongside this article. I'm not going to throw out any conspiracy theories, but I'll let you connect the dots. The human element. In angling research, you can never overestimate the power of a bass fisherman to adapt to almost any situation. No matter how adverse it might be, that some anglers catch bass on every currently manufactured worm hook is fact. With the hooks lacking hooking effectiveness, the anglers make up for it in the way that they set the hook or play the fish. The information provided in this report is therefore intended as a guide for the Bassmaster who is having problems hooking fish with plastic worm hooks, or the novice who is just getting into worming. The old pro isn't likely to trade in his standard Sprout hook for all the twisting type True Turns in the world, nor will he likely need to. If you have doubts about how effective your plastic worming is, however, you might want to conduct your own hook set experiment to determine the best hook for your kind of bass fishing. If you do, be honest with yourself and look at several of the hooks included in the Angling Research Associates test, not just one that performed especially well. As seldom as bass strikes usually come. What? Who says they come seldom? Come on. As seldom as bass strikes usually come, you certainly want to maximize your chances of hooking and landing the fish you encounter. The ARA staff hopes this information will help Bassmasters to do just that. The perfect fish hook, question mark? There isn't one, nor perhaps will there ever be one. The fact that many bass escape makes bass fishing the challenge it is, but the existence of hooks that can, in the hands of able bassers, result in 80% or more bass landed of those hooked indicates that plastic worm hooks have come a long way. And they have. And so, you know, maybe what I should do is a video on some of the guidelines I use when I'm trying to match a hook to a technique to a specific plastic type of worm. I have a few general guidelines, and that would make a good video. So anyways, hopefully that bored you to death and you got your eyes shut and you're sawing logs. So that's it from this video. Over.